The observation dome of the Galactic Academy shimmered with a faint blue glow as the young alien scholars filed in, their eyes gleaming with curiosity and arrogance alike. For weeks they had prepared for this excursion, studying the life forms of Earth, memorizing reports that described humanity as a short-lived, fragile species that relied on technology far more than on physical strength. Among the students, laughter and teasing flowed easily, each repeating the same belief. Humans were amusing creatures, brittle and breakable, remarkable only for their tendency to overestimate themselves. Their professor, an elder whose patience had been tested many times before, warned them against making assumptions too quickly, but even his words were dismissed with smirks. The textbooks spoke with certainty. Humans had no claws, no armored skin, no venom, and their endurance was laughably limited compared to the galaxy's more durable species. They lived only a few decades before age devoured their strength. To the students, it was obvious that such beings survived only because luck and crude tools had carried them through the centuries. The shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, parting clouds to reveal a forest canopy stretching endlessly in green waves. Somewhere beneath those trees, a human subject awaited them, chosen carefully by the Academy for observation. The students clustered against the viewing ports, commenting on the primitive beauty of the planet. Some wondered aloud why the council even considered humanity significant enough to study. Others joked that it would be entertaining to watch one collapse from exhaustion. When the door slid open and the humid air of the forest spilled into the observation chamber, they spotted him. The human was clad in armor worn from long use, a rifle slung across his shoulder. He bore scars along his arms, and though he moved with steady purpose, there was a limp in his step that did not escape the students' notice. One whispered, "He already looks broken." Another chuckled, "Fragile," as the record said. Yet something about his eyes unsettled them. They were not the eyes of a creature resigned to weakness, but of one who carried storms within. The human's name was not given to them, only his designation as a soldier from a conflict the students had never studied in depth. Still, they could sense he had seen things they could not imagine. For hours they watched as he set up a small camp in the clearing, checking his weapon, tending to supplies, and scanning the terrain with quiet vigilance. His movements were economical, precise, born from years of repetition. When one student scoffed that he appeared nervous, the professor corrected them softly. "Not nervous. Alert. There is a difference." But the students only rolled their eyes, convinced the human's caution was another mark of weakness. The professor began to lecture, speaking of humanity's reliance on cooperation, of their peculiar adaptability in hostile environments. He mentioned their resilience in the face of disease, famine, and endless wars, but his words slid past inattentive ears. The students were waiting for proof, for the moment when the human's frailty would reveal itself. In their minds, it was inevitable. As dusk fell, shadows stretched long across the forest floor, and distant cries echoed between the trees. The human stirred, lifting his weapon, scanning the darkening perimeter. The students pressed closer to the glass, some giggling, expecting him to panic. Instead, his posture shifted, calm, steady, ready. He knelt by the fire he had built, dousing the flames until only embers remained, then blended himself into the environment with practiced ease. The students exchanged uneasy glances. They had expected a clumsy creature, not this deliberate preparation. One asked if perhaps humans were more cautious than weak. Another dismissed the thought immediately. "He hides because he fears. That is all." Still, the seed of doubt had been planted. Night descended fully, and with it came the rustle of movement in the underbrush. Shapes flickered between the trees, unfamiliar, threatening. The professor adjusted the observation field, allowing the students a clearer view. They leaned in, their earlier laughter forgotten. The human's eyes narrowed. His body coiled like a spring. He knew he was not alone. The conflict the students had been waiting for was about to unfold, though not in the way they had imagined. The human's apparent fragility was about to be tested, and the outcome would challenge everything they believed. The students held their breath as the first pair of glowing eyes appeared in the darkness, and for the first time since their arrival, none of them spoke. The forest itself seemed to pause, as though aware that something vital was about to begin. And in that silence, the soldier gripped his weapon tighter, teeth clenched, every muscle ready. Fragile or not, he was not going to run. The forest erupted with violence before the students could comprehend what they were seeing. Shadows tore free from the trees, metallic forms moving with unnerving speed, their limbs glinting with blades and strange weaponry. The human soldier did not hesitate. He dropped to one knee, his rifle rising in fluid motion, and the clearing lit with bursts of fire and searing streaks of energy. The first machine fell in a spray of sparks, but more surged forward, their glowing eyes fixed on him like predators, scenting blood. From behind the safety of the observation dome, the alien students gasped. They had expected the human to freeze, to collapse beneath the sheer terror of the attack. Instead, he fought with precision, his weapon cracking through the night, his body moving in practiced arcs that spoke of endless drills and scars of experience. When one of the creatures closed the distance, leaping with blades raised, the soldier swung his rifle like a club, the impact ringing out as metal dented under the blow. His forearm split open from the clash, blood pouring down, yet he did not falter. The students could not look away. "He's wounded," one whispered, expecting him to retreat. But retreat never came. The soldier bared his teeth, half a snarl, half a roar, and drove forward as though pain only sharpened his will. Every step left red on the ground, yet his momentum carried him into the center of the swarm. The machines adjusted, encircling him, firing bursts of light that scorched the earth. The soldier dove behind a fallen log, breath ragged but mind unbroken. His hands shook as he reloaded, but the shake was not hesitation. It was exhaustion beaten back by determination. His eyes burned with fury, not fear. The professor watched in silence, hands clasped behind his back, his gaze fixed not on the machines but on the students. Their earlier smugness was gone, replaced by wide eyes and trembling voices. "Why doesn't he fall?" one asked. "Why does he keep standing?" The human broke from cover, charging into the fray. He fought not as a creature clinging to life, but as one determined to deny his enemy's victory, even if it meant his end. When his weapon emptied, he drew a knife and carved through the closest machine, sparks raining against his face. His other hand pressed against his bleeding side, yet he used that pain like fuel, each wound only driving him harder. A towering machine stepped forward, larger than the rest, its chest glowing with lethal energy. The soldier stared at it with grim defiance, shoulders squared, lips curled in a wordless challenge. He was trembling, nearly broken, but he refused to yield. When the energy blast seared across the clearing, he dove, rolled, and hurled his knife with perfect aim. The blade struck the machine's core, and with a shriek of twisting metal it collapsed. The students' silence was heavy, broken only by the frantic beat of their hearts. They could not reconcile the fragile creature from their texts with the warrior who bled and bled, yet fought without pause. He should have collapsed long ago, yet he endured. The conflict was no longer just between human and machine. It was between belief and reality, between the arrogance of assumptions and the undeniable truth of resilience. The remaining machines faltered, circling, calculating, but the soldier stood tall despite his wounds. His breath came ragged, his legs shook, yet his eyes never wavered. He wiped blood from his face and raised his weapon once more, daring them to come. That sight seared itself into the minds of every student watching, the image of a being who would rather fall fighting than bend to fear. The professor's voice finally broke the silence, low but heavy with meaning. "You see now. Fragile in body, yes, but not in spirit. That is their strength." The battle raged on, and the outcomes still hung in the balance, but one truth was already carved deep into alien minds. The human would not surrender. He would fight until nothing remained, and that defiance, more than strength or weaponry, was the core of his kind. The students leaned closer, unable to turn away. The question was no longer if the human would fall, but how far he would go before the end. And somewhere within that realization came a spark of unease. If one human could endure this, what might an entire species achieve when pushed to the edge? The smoke hung low over the violence before the students drifting between the twisted bodies of ruined machines. Shadows tore free from the staggered to his knees, metallic forms moving with unnerving his armor torn, their limbs glinting with blades. Every movement seemed like it should be his last. The human soldier, yet his grip did not hesitate. Rifle never slackened. He dropped to one knee, his eyes rifle rising in fluid motion, fierce vigilance, and the clearing lit with bursts unwilling of fire, to let his guard fall. Even when silence had replaced the first machine, fell in a spray of sparks. From behind the transparent wall of the observation dome, their glowing eyes fixed on him like predators, scenting blood. Their arrogance had drained away, the safety of the observation by something that the alien students like awe. They had expected the human on this world certain of their superiority, beneath the sheer terror confident that humans were fragile curiosities at best. He fought with precision, but now his weapon cracking through the night, the battered figure, his body moving into practiced arcs that spoke. They were unsettled by a truth and that shattered their education. When one of the creatures closed the distance, leaping with blades raised, one student pressed a trembling hand against the glass. The impact ringing out as metal dented. The words carried no scorn now. His forearm split open from the clash. Another whispered, blood pouring down. Why fight when survival is impossible? The students could not look away, like smoke in the professor's ears. One whispered, and he finally answered him with gravity. That silence never came. Because the soldier bared his teeth. Giving up would be worse than dying. Half a roar. That is what you failed to understand. As though pain the soldier sharpened his will, groaning. Every step still dragged on the ground upright. Yet his momentum toward the dome, him into the center, unaware of the student's stares, the machines embodying a message encircling him. Any lecture, firing bursts his body was wrecked, that scorched yet his will refused. The soldier dove behind a he would rise as many times as it took, but mind unbroken. That sight etched itself into the student's shook as he reloaded deeply, but the shake was not hesitation ever could. It was exhaustion. The professor allowed them to watch a little longer. Before his eyes burned with fury. His tone was neither triumphant nor mocking. The professor watched in silence, quietly reverent, hands clasped behind his back. You believe strength came from armored skin, not on the machines, but on the students, from long lifespans. Their earlier smugness was gone, humanity's weapon is different. By wide eyes and trembling voices. They adapt. Why does he burn with a will that cannot be quantified? Why does he keep standing? The students exchanged uneasy glances, charging into the fray. Some looked ashamed. He fought not as a creature clinging to life, the arrogance but as one determined to deny his enemies childish now, even if it meant his beneath the weight. When his weapon emptied, he drew a knife of humans carved through the closest machine. Fragile race sparks no longer held any shape in their minds. His other hand pressed against his bleeding side. Unfamiliar respect yet he used that pain like tinged fuel. With fear. Each one of the younger students driving him harder. Voice barely above a towering machine stepped forward. If one of them larger can fight like this, its chest what could many do together with lethal energy? The professor did not. The soldier stared at it with grim letting defiance. The implication shoulders squared. Finally, he said, in a wordless that is why the galaxy watches them. He was trembling. That is why we nearly broken. Their fragility is not a weakness. When the energy blast seared across the clearing, the soldier in the clearing slumped against a fallen tree with perfect exhaustion. Finally, the blade struck the machine's core. His weapon slipped from his grasp. Twisting metal, his eyes remained fierce. The student's silence scanning was heavy, broken only by the frantic beat of their hearts. The students could not decide if it was bravery or madness from their tech kept him conscious. The warrior, yet they knew and bled deep down, fought without pause. It was something far greater than either. He should have collapsed long ago. In the silence of the dome, the professor ended the lesson. Was no longer you came here to mock human and machine. Instead, you leave with a warning. Belief and never reality. Mistake softness between the arrogance of assumptions. Never assume fragility undeniable truth of resilience. For in the heart of every human burns the capacity to rise, calculating all logic. But the soldier stood tall despite his wounds. The student said nothing came as the shuttle prepared for departure. Yet his eyes of them carried away the same image. He wiped blood from his face and raised his weapon once more, yet still daring them to come. It was not strength seared itself into the minds not in the way they understood watching. It was the image of a being who would rather change fighting than bend as the forest receded beneath the shuttle's ascent. Finally broke the silence. One student quietly recorded a note heavy with the Academy archives. You see now, the words were simple, fragile in body, but heavy with truth, but not in spirit. We thought them fragile. That is their strength. We thought them weak. The battle raged on, and the outcomes still hung in the balance. They're the only ones who fight even when hope is gone. Alien minds. Perhaps that is why they would not surrender. Perhaps he would fight until nothing remained. They must never be underestimated. The professor closed his eyes as the engines carried them skyward. The lesson was closer, but unable to turn away. It would not fade. The question was no longer if the human would fall, would echo but how far he would go before something that textbooks could never teach. And somewhere within that realization, they had seen a human keep fighting. And
one
in that
human
sight,
could endure this,
they had discovered
what
the
might
most
an entire
dangerous
species
strength of
achieve
all.
when pushed
Would you
to
like
the
me to
edge?
now combine all 3 sections into one seamless 3,000-word story draft, or keep them as distinct chapters for your 5,000-word target?